So when I'm starting out on a commission or an illustration, before I do the color mock-up, before I do, more of the final drawings, I do what's called thumbnail drawings. And these are just designed to, like a little shorthand, to give the client or myself an overview of what I'm going to commit a lot more time drawing and planning for before it actually gets made. And so the project that I'm working on right now is a bobcat, a bob kitten to be precise. I have a client, and a collector, and he and his wife have had a family of bobcats coming into their backyard, and he's provided me with some really nice photographs to work from, because obviously I can't just sit in their backyard and sketch kitty cats, because they come and go as they please. And initially he wasn't really sure if he wanted the mother cat or a kitten by itself. And I thought, but wouldn't it be neat if we could do a design with the mother and the kitten together? But we didn't have any photos in that post, so I had to do a bunch of other drawings, and unfortunately I can't seem to find them anywhere. I've turned my studio upside down looking for it. I showed him the drawing and he okayed it, and so we'll go on to the next step here. So this is the original drawing I've done of the mama bobcat and her little one. So what I've got is some tracing paper. This is Strathmore tracing paper, 14 by 17 inches, I believe. And what I'll do is I'll put this over the drawing. I will trace over my drawing, and then once I've got that done, I'll flip it over and take that tracing and put some graphite on the back side of it, and then transfer that to the watercolor paper, which in this instance will be Arch's 12 by 16 inch cold press. So it's not too bumpy, but it's not without any bumps, because I find that's really useful for doing texture. But the reason I want to transfer it is if I draw on this directly, it actually, and if I need to erase or do any alterations, that will actually mess up the texture of this paper, and I want it to be as uniformly absorbent and smooth as possible. And as you can see, I've already experimented around with different pigments and different ways I'd like to do this, and I did a mock-up of this little guy here. But I primarily, did this just to make sure this was, the effect I wanted to get. And I'm going to use some liquid masking with some dip pen to get the texture I want, and as well as the whiskers. So, and Skeeter's got all his different fun things to play with. He's being camera shy at the moment. But yeah, so he won't get bored, because you've got things to do. Yeah, you actually look like you need a nap. But it's summertime, so I'm gonna turn on my little fan here. But yeah, this is on the western side of the house, and all that afternoon sun just comes blaring in here, and it can get up to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. But yeah, but for the initial tracing over my original drawing, I'll just use a regular pencil, a 2B, or I think this case it's a 4B sketching pencil, and I just put it in this to extend it for a while. But that's not super exciting, so I'm not going to film myself doing that, but I'll show you the next step of the deal here. Okay, so as you can see now, I have the original drawing, and I've got a very faintly traced out version, and now I'm going to flip this over. And I don't know if you can see this is quite faint, but now that this is flipped over, I'm going to take a harder pencil, usually a 4H, and then I'll go over what I just did, and That way I'll have something to transfer over to the final paper. So let's go and do that. And if you notice, I actually kind of go over it a little bit thicker than just a single line. So that way we'll have a little bit more graphite to go by, and it's easier to see as well. And it's a little time consuming. You can get some transfer paper, but I find that sometimes this method works best for me, just because I can see what I'm transferring, whereas if I have that black carbon paper type stuff, it's a little trickier. Okay. All right, so now I've got my original drawing and the copied over drawing together. And as you can see, I don't go into as much detail with the copied drawing, the traced drawing, because once again, this is going to get put onto the paper underneath. So what I'll have now is the original drawing as my guide, and I'll go on to put that underneath here. These are more of guidelines than anything else. I forgot to mention that when I'm going over these lines to trace them onto the paper, I typically will use a ballpoint pen. I think this is my Fisher Space pen because I can tell the difference between that and the pencil that I've put down, but also the roller ball within this actually seems to transfer the graphite to the paper better. All right, so now you can see here's my original drawing. Here is the transfer, and here is the drawing on the watercolor paper. You can see I have a bit of shading in the original drawing, but then in this one I do not. I just have the hard outline. It's almost like a coloring book version of my own drawing. And I tweaked a few things, like the grass. I think originally it was just some random grass, but I wanted to make it a little more accurate, and this is our native buffalo grass. Sometimes we put in a lot of thought for the animals, but not any for the plants, and I think even that little bit can help make it a cut above the rest. And once I've taped off all the areas that I don't want to accidentally splatter paint onto, I put together here masking liquid. I prefer this one because it's actually a kind of a bluish color instead of the off-white, which is a little hard to distinguish. And I put it in my little ink well, but I don't mix it. I don't shake it up because the bubbles will actually make the latex not work. So I'll take that and I'll take my dip pen and I'll dip that in and apply it to the areas that I just want to be pure white, like the whiskers and a few little highlights, and also to protect the grasses here. So let's do that. Oh, and a couple other tools that might work are glass pens, like this one here, and also these little clay working tools that have little round edges at the tip. The point being is you don't want to scratch your watercolor paper, so you want something that's relatively benign at the end, like these guys here. And even this pin here that I was showing you, it has a little bit of a round tip at the edge there. So you don't necessarily want to use a crow quill, but something like this or even rounder. I have no idea what I did with my other nibs, so that's why I'm going to try these other ones as well. Because you can use a brush a lot. I know a lot of artists will do that, but for stuff like this, I find it's just actually easier to use something where you don't have to, to do the thing where you use the soap on the bristles and all that other stuff. Just have to learn how to manage it so you don't end up with blobs everywhere. And with grass, you put it at the bottom and then grow upwards, just like you would do with a plant. Oh, and I forgot to mention one more tool I use when applying this liquid miskit or frisket is this kind of brush. You might have come across this in the crafting section of your local hobby store. They're basically used for applying enamel paint or other paints to models, or like airplane models or car models. And you can get a whole pack of them relatively inexpensively. And what I like about them is they have these very synthetic large fibers. And so what happens is you don't want this for watercolor because that'll just slough right off and not hang on. But because this latex is so gummy, this holds onto it just fine. And then as an added bonus, it washes off really easily compared to the other kind of natural fibers. So try one of these if you haven't before, because it also works. But it works for larger applications, whereas I'm trying to do something very fine like fur, whiskers, and grass. So that's why I'll use these guys. Okay, now we're coming to one of my more favorite parts of the process, which is lifting up the frisket or miskit that's been protecting these whiskers this whole time. So I'm going to take this rubber cement pickup eraser, I think is what they call these, and what it'll do is it'll stick to this. You can also use a kneaded eraser, but I don't want to get that gummed up with the latex. So we'll just take this and we'll just very gently go like this, and it should just get picked right up. See that? Whoop. I'll go this way real gentle. Helps if you have fingernails, which I don't right now. And this is another reason why you want to be careful when you use hair dryers on this stuff, because it can become embedded. You have to be real careful. Use the cool setting, not hot, when you're doing that. Look at that. Okay, and then go with this one. And the reason you want to do this also is you don't want to get your finger oils too much in the paint. And I don't know why I did that one, because there's nothing behind it. Do some up here. Sometimes I even have to tilt it to see where I put it down, because it gets a little blended in. All right, and then I will put a little bit of mild shading on this and fix that a little bit there. Let's see, I think that's, yeah, that one, it got breached, so I can scritch that out with a little knife. But see, so much better. Well, hello there. It's Friday, and I am in a plein air art exhibition once again over at 3 Square Gallery here in Fort Collins, Colorado. This is their first ever plein air exhibition, and it's like a huge honor to be selected to be in it. There's going to be a lot of people I know, and probably a lot of people in general. So let me get in early, and maybe I'll get to show you around. Come on. And what is this that we have here?